Hello, I'm Clint. Welcome to Swatches live stream 67. I'm getting some conflicting information here from YouTube, but okay, I guess the stream is coming through, but it's not giving me a preview, which is a little odd. Okay, well, we will go ahead and move into it then. I am a professional illustrator, and here on this live stream, I will be trying to give the best feedback as I can to the entries submitted to the Machine and Giant Art Challenge. There are, I believe, 10 entries for this particular challenge, and we will go through each one of those, but we have some announcements and updates to make before we get into it. Now, these images that you're looking at right here are the examples that were provided for the challenge to give inspiration and direction as to what the challenge was about. And let me go through, let's see, first things first, for the patrons, just a quick update to let you know that almost no work has been done on the next reward, which is the Materials Part 2 reward. I just finished up with a commission that I had to do. There was another commission I had to deal with as well. And then I will be going out of town some next week. It will likely be next month before that gets to you, just knowing how many images that I have to create for that video. It's going to take a bit. So hang tight on there. I will get to it and we will go through that when I can. Otherwise, we will also be kicking off a new art challenge here in a minute. Honestly, I didn't even think about the fact that we were ending this challenge and I needed to come up with a new one. So I did come up with an idea and we'll go over that. But for you to know what they were trying to do for this particular challenge, they were trying to create a medieval machine, something like one of these. These were from Dark Age, most of them. That's from Paizo or Maze Games, I guess. And it should be an autonomous machine. It shouldn't have a driver, unlike that example. And it should be capable of attacking or defending itself, some sort of weaponry. And then the other option was to do a portrait, but of a giant. So you could work on how to do features and how to do skin and the rest of those, but not to just copy someone's portrait, but to get it and to twist it and to change it up and create a new sort of creature out of it. So that is what the artists are trying to achieve. This is a breakdown. If you want to pause the recording and take a look at that, that is what they were provided. But as people generally like, we're going to start with actually going over what the new challenge is, and you can be thinking about that during the course of the program. And also a quick explanation of how it works. With the challenges, there are a limited number of slots to get into the challenge if you do want to get feedback from me. All of the images and the outlines are openly provided for anyone to work on their own time, but they're not going to get feedback during the program. In order to get in the challenge, you do need to purchase an e-ticket. These should be going up for sale tomorrow. And there will be a limited number, probably 12. That's what we've been doing. And then you will have 4 weeks to create your image, 2 weeks to submit in a concept, and then 2 more weeks to submit in the final, and we'll do a live stream on the concept, and then we'll do a live stream on the final. And at any point, you are welcome to put your image up into the Facebook group at swatches.group to get feedback from the general community. Okay, so I was thinking, all right, next month is October. That's mainly when this challenge will take place. And I'm not a big Halloween guy, but it did make me think about Harry Potter. So we are going to have a Hogwarts-based challenge. The outline is Hogwarts or Hallows Eve. You have choice between 2 different subjects based around the world of Harry Potter. So in the Hogwarts, we have The outline here is movie producers have a difficult task of defining the looks for locations based on descriptions on a page. Things could end up looking very different. In different ways, the movie shows us just one. It's your task to show your design for Hogwarts. Not your painting of the movie's depiction, but your version of the location. Maybe the towers have a more Gothic influence. Maybe the greenhouses are on top of the buildings. Maybe there are bridges connecting the towers. Design and general shading only for the first 2 weeks. This is primarily a design challenge, not so much a fully rendered scene challenge. So I want you to focus on just doing the design, having good forms and architecture and perspective for the first 2 weeks, then handle the lightings and the colors for the latter 2 weeks. I remember reading the first book, Philosopher's Stone, before I watched the movie, and the movie did a lot of things right. It was very accurate to the book, but there was differences between the Hogwarts that it showed and the Hogwarts that I had in mind when I read the book. And that's what I want you guys to show me. When you read the book, or when you think about it, how do you see it differently than what the movie showed us? These are some ideas right here. Maybe did you think that it was more of a walled castle? Was there a big wall around it? Was it maybe having a less of a footprint, smaller base? Maybe it was a more vertical tower with towers on top of towers going up. Was there parts of the tower that actually, or the castle that actually extended out over the lake, and there was big, pillars coming up out of the lake holding up pieces of the castle? Something else to keep in mind, that if you watch the Potter movies, there is a variety of the buildings that are are held up by magic, if you want to think about it that way, and they are not plumb. Diagon Alley, a lot of the buildings are askew. The roofs sort of lean in. The chimneys are all sort of crooked. Even the front to Gringotts Bank, the big marble columns are sort of crooked. The Weasley's house, the Burrow, I believe there was a mention in the book, a phrase about he suspects that some sort of magic was used to keep it upright because he found the design of it, the structure of it, a bit questionable. And that's not something that we've ever seen in Hogwarts itself. So, yeah, Hogwarts is a very believable place, and it's very plumb, and architecturally it's very believable. But maybe you add in a bit more of that whimsical feel to the building. Next option is Hallows Eve. I want to think that there is reference in the book. I cannot 100% confirm, but I want to think that they do talk about them having like a party or something for Halloween, but we never do see that depicted in the movies. But this is what it's about. It's concept art challenge here. Hogwarts is putting on a Hallows Eve party. Show us a view of the Great Hall, looking towards the end at the staff table, which has been replaced with a stage. Students are putting on a play, and it is your job as the concept artist, to create the key art for this scene. The image should convey the feel of the scene, the way the hall has been decorated, and the lighting. Use a horizontal canvas. Make sure the perspective is correct, reference the movie's version of the Great Hall. In this one, it's going to be probably more complicated than the Hogwarts redesign. For this, it is a key art concept sort of challenge, where you are being tasked to essentially give us a frame of what it would look like if we are watching that scene in the movie. It should have accurate lighting, it should have accurate perspective, it should be the guide for how that scene should look when it eventually gets filmed. That means that you're going to have to think about getting the structure correct. You're going to have to think about the stage design, costume design, lighting design. You don't need to worry about things like painting faces and hands and getting likenesses of people. That's not what it's about. It's creating something that the rest of the production team would use as a guide in order to create that scene. Okay, well, that will be the next challenge. Tickets should go on sale tomorrow, with half of the tickets going up about midday and the second half going up towards midnight Central Standard Time. And these are just some quick examples of Hogwarts. So the first one will be an exterior view of the castle. These are two scenes from the movies. Then this is from the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in either Orlando or California. I don't know which one. This is the massive miniature made for multiple of the films when they filmed it. This is a model of the location. This is concept art for Hogwarts. So for yours, let's just stick with black and white for the first 2 weeks. And you can be thinking about this. Now, if you want to, start painting over from one of these scenes and modify it if it helps get your head around what you want. Or go get a castle. Go look up on Google and find images of castles and think, well, maybe this castle has some influence that I like. Okay, then use that as the base and start expanding on it and paint off of that. The other one should be an interior view. Now, this is the Yule Ball from the fourth movie, and it is showing how they changed up the Yule Ball, the Great Hall, for the Yule Ball festivities. This is, of course, a view of the same location that Professor Flitwick was, having a choir singing for the third movie. This is from one of the games, and that is a good option to go look up. Okay, so look for the games, might show you perspectives that you like or show you some different lighting options and ideas that they don't show in the movie. You might even be able to find a 3D model of the location that you could move around to get the perspective that you like. This is just a general scene of showing what it looked like during one of the scenes for the Christmas holidays. So there we go. With that out of the way, we are going to move on and take a look at the entries. And I'm going to get a sip of water. First up is Anna. Okay, now Anna, good progress here, and I just want to turn on. This is where the concept was when she entered that, and she made some adjustments. I talked about the bridge of the nose being adjusted. We talked about some of the other forms around the eye being adjusted, also the top of the head, bringing back a little anatomy into the neck. I can't remember, maybe we talked about lighting a little bit as well, but now we're going to move on from this. And if she was to continue, what are some things that she could keep in mind? She does say that she doesn't consider this finished yet, but feels better equipped to do so. You said, I would like to ask, how would you go about getting pores and rendering the skin more believably? One of the things that I have to mention here on that topic is pores do not make the skin look realistic. They don't make the skin look unrealistic, but that's not what makes the skin look more realistic. It is a common misconception that details make things look more real, and that's just not the case. We don't need details in order for us to feel like something is real or not, or believable or not. Like this guy right down here, that's what this arrow is for. This guy down here looks like he has realistic skin. He looks very believable, which makes sense because it's a photograph. I can't see a pore on that guy's skin. I can't see a mole. I can't see hardly even a wrinkle. At this zoom, it just doesn't matter. I don't need that level of detail for it to feel real. So what am I picking up on? I'm picking up on its behavior. I'm picking up on its structural behavior. How much does it bend? How does it bend? How does it fold? How does it stretch over the skeleton? If it was too loose, it wouldn't feel like skin. If it was too taut, it wouldn't feel like skin. So that would be one thing that helps tell me. The other thing is, what color is it? That helps, tell me as well. How does it reflect the light? That's a big one right there. Is it really matte? Is it really shiny? Is it somewhere in between? Those sorts of things together are going to make the skin more believable, not necessarily the texture of pores, etc. I think you can get the level of believability you want without resorting to pores. And I'm actually encouraging you not to do that because it usually doesn't come out well. It usually, unless you are going for hyper realism and you're not, then you're going to have a really not a good mix of really tight texturally detail, and then the rest of it is not as realistic. The forms are not as realistic. The anatomy isn't as realistic. But yet you got this hyper detail in the skin texture. I'm just, you can try it, and you might need to try it in order to see what I'm talking about, but be aware of that. I didn't screw up the neck anatomy too much. No, I think the neck anatomy looks pretty good. And this is a good way to start. And what I would do from here is actually go back and then sort of loosen it up a little bit. Kind of what you see on some of these. You can see the structure underneath, but now let's just loosen it up a little bit so that the skin isn't quite so taut. Right? The skin is going to just be a bit looser. It's going to average out on some of these areas. You're going to get folds kind of stretching across this. So the highlight is going to kind of average out a bit more, not quite so tight. And we're going to get some more folds along here, right? Some of this is going to have folds like you see on these guys over here. And then we're going to have some little folds, which are likely going to be lighter. In the dark areas is probably the lighter little lines that you're going to see along the neck there. Next up, a couple of other things. I'm going to just try to bounce through these a bit quicker. Now is the time that you need to step back and think about the lighting a bit more and think about the form of what this guy is, what form he has. So if you want to think about the spherical nature of his head and the light coming down, now it's not coming straight down on him. It looks like it's coming from behind him a bit, which means that all of this is, oh, I've got that smoothing on. That's why it's laggy. Okay. It's got that smoothing on. So it's like this much of it is going to be in shadow. And, this is all going to be light. Remember, it's basically just a sphere. This would be light. If that light is coming from sort of overhead, it's probably going to catch some of that plane. Not so much there. Do I have a lot of color variance on? I do. That's why. Okay. Now this is going to be shadowed, and it's going to be muted down. And we're not going to have that much bright. The eye is going to get really dark back in there. You can look at these two examples. This is very accurate lighting. Whoever rendered this did a really good job. And you notice that the white of the eye, there, I dropped the white of the eye. It's that dark. okay? White of the eye does not have a specific value. It is completely relative to what the lighting condition is. And the lighting condition is that it is on the opposite side of the light source. The light is behind it, and it's back underneath a heavy brow and eyelashes. So all of it is going to be shadowed. Same thing, all of this is going to be shadowed. None of this is catching direct light. None of this is catching direct light. None of this. This is all going to get shadowed. You're right in that this is going to be more gradated because it is spherical, but we're probably going to get more over there. Some of this, probably towards this area, is going to start picking up some light towards the end of his nose, maybe a little bit along there. So we want to come back and make sure we're establishing the major light and shadow patterns that will bring out the form and not lose it in all of the detail of the folds on the face, all the wrinkles, that sort of thing. And that's easy to do. This is something that is fairly common for me to do. Is you go in there, you start putting in a bunch of detail, then you have to come back and reestablish what some of the major forms are. Just thinking that light's coming down here. This is probably all going to be a shadow playing across there. I don't know that that's going to be catching much light there. Probably none of that's going to be catching light. None of that. Probably more like this. Again, just thinking about the forms. Is it a cylinder? Is it a sphere? Is it cubical? Not much cubical in, this scene, but there we go. Then what we can do is come back with maybe a hard light layer. Put that down lower. I want to hit some of that light coming through the skin there. Let that bump up a bit. Come on. Linear light. I want to get more control out of it. Here we go. What do I need? Somewhere along here. Okay. Now let's go back into it. Are you going to get some of that light coming through the skin there? Because the skin is translucent. You got to remember that. Skin is not opaque. And if you're wanting to get believable skin, that is one of the major things to get right about skin is its translucency. It is not opaque, and that light is coming through the skin. So it is going to get the thinnest areas and really push them up in value. We're also going to get a bit more through, coming through some of this, coming through some of this, coming along that edge, coming through some of that down there. Probably going to have some warm tones back under there. Let that pop up brighter. So something on that line. Okay, moving on, shadow. This is a little questionable. I'm gonna just note it to you in case you want to deal with it. But what we have is this scar coming down like this, and it's kind of flattening out the face because the contour is that his cheek is coming out, and this is running opposite to the contour of his face, which makes it feel like it's flatter. And I would suggest changing it just so it follows the contour of the face more like that. It would get more form out of it. But technically, it would be possible, of course, to have a scar that bent in a way that from that angle, it would make that shape. It just isn't advantageous. And also remember that this is following the form of the face. So this scar would probably, if it's following the contour, bend out there a little bit maybe. Maybe it bends up over that one a little bit, comes up over this a little bit, and then a bit more that direction with it. Okay, what else? Oh, with the green light, I feel like the green light is something that you didn't really have any good reference for. And it is the sort of thing that, again, if you want to get accurate skin, we need you to reference that a bit more, because if it's not behaving correctly, it's not going to make sense. It's not going to be believable. From that angle, if it's hitting this much of the mouth, then it's going to be hitting more of the nose. It's probably going to be hitting more like this. It's going to be catching up here a lot. The eye actually casts a shadow up a little bit. It's going to be dark on the top sides of these, probably more. This is actually going to be catching light over there a little bit. Probably more shadow along here. All of this angle is going to be catching light. That's all going to be shadowed like you have it here. This lip is probably going to be catching a bit of shadow going up on that, cast shadow there. If it's catching the edge of that one, it's probably not going to be having light coming that far across. It's likely going to be getting more like this region, and you're probably going to be getting a bit of light up along right there, maybe a little bit there. So, then this back edge, this is just a really hard edge, and the hair here is very defined. I would suggest softening out that a little bit. They're too defined, and that sort of hair is almost not visible. It's super, super soft, and we don't necessarily need to bring attention to it. And when you have little sharp repeated lines, it does that. So you could just come back here with a smudge tool. We're just smudging them out a little bit. Just a bit softer, right? And then you could also adjust the lighting so that you have the lighting basically even all the way across. But that's not how light works. Light doesn't just follow an even amount all the way across. Like, it has to bend around the forms as the forms are being lit. So it's going to catch more of the top of this one because that's facing up. It's going to have less on that one. And then this is not going to be lit on the underside there because it's rounding away, but it'll catch more of the top of this one. It also is probably going to catch more of the top of this. And we might want to put a mid-tone between the bright area and the background, just to keep it from feeling like a more planar edge. And another thing is trying to convey believable skin with some sense of tactile. You know, we can't convey tactile through two-dimensional image, but we can use the edge of it to suggest what the tactile sensation is. So there would be your direction with that one. Moving on, Anna Maria is up next. Okay, okay, yeah, that was your reference. Okay, in no particular order here, you say, I was wondering if I went overboard with the details on his face. And we talked about last time coming in with a darker tone, blanketing it over the area, then coming in with a lighter tone on top of that and essentially pulling out the lights rather than painting in the wrinkles. You're doing the reverse there. And on the whole, I don't think you did. This is the only area that really catches me off as being, well, probably don't need that much up there. And this area of the face, it doesn't bother me at all. I would expect that he could be a really wrinkly fellow. It's just that on the top of the head, like you see on this guy, like you see on your model here, unless he has some sort of interesting anatomy, more like your demon dude here with striations or something, you know, more like a Klingon, then this is probably going to be a lot smoother. So we could just pull out some of the bumpiness there on top of his smooth head. Hubbard says, so I did stay with Orc direction. Hope it's okay. Just fine. Just fine. Not a problem with it. I think you came up with a nice design. I'd rather just see you see it through and be, you know, happy with the image. It's still close enough. It's not a bother for me. Okay, so yeah, that one. What else? Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this one. Similar to the last image, but I think it's more prominent on this one, so we'll go ahead and talk about it. And that is this side light that you have, this warm light. Now, side light can be an excellent tool to use. Several of your references make use of them. If we want to take a look at that, we have an excellent side light here with a warm light on one side that's prominent. The other side is more muted, it's cooler. Over here we have this nice little edge light coming down there. Again, cooler there, warmer on the main light. No, not very, very subtle warm, you know, light on that guy. But yours has this really strong warm light. And that's becoming problematic because it is the most saturated thing in the image. And it's creating the highest amount of contrast. This eye should be the focal point. It's the most centered point, and it is what you would naturally connect to, but my eye keeps running up and down right here. Again, most saturated and the highest contrast between light and dark along an edge. So I would suggest that you would tone that down. I'm not going to say get rid of it because it does have a function there, but let's tone it down. If you were to maybe just get a color layer and make that light color, is that not picking up the right layer? I'm just grabbing that background tone. I'm painting along that edge with that background tone. I'm just toning it down. And if you want to, you could raise its value more so it's a starker edge, but it doesn't have a lot of color to it. It could be a fairly bright little edge. But the lack of saturation is going to keep it from being as jarring, I guess. It keeps wanting to kind of steal the attention away. So I feel like that would work a bit better. Then overall, we're losing a lot of color, and I would say go in with a vibrance adjustment layer. Let's flip these around. You can probably, I don't know exactly what you see on yours. We'll put history over there and put this guy here. So on a new adjustment layer, we'll create a vibrance and then shift the vibrance up. There we go. Now we're talking. He was really grayed out. Now, I don't need it to affect everything. I just need it to affect this section. So we turn that on and off, and you can look at the difference there. You see it's gray, and then it's got more color to it, like that. And then that, I feel like it was better. It's got a bit more pop to it. And this is also somewhere we could come back with a dodge tool, set that to highlights. So once you establish some of your wrinkle forms, you can come back with the highlights. And you know what? Let's create a snapshot real quick so we can follow along. And just pull out some of the highlights. This is also an approach, kind of going back to Anna's question earlier, and that is creating a bit of texture. Now, a good way to actually create texture on skin is if the skin is a bit darker, then you can come along with a dodge tool set to like highlight, and then you can dodge it up. Now, I'm going overboard with it so that you can see it really well. But get a textury brush, and you can dodge, probably not highlights, let's set it to medium. Medium is probably better. And you can establish a bit of, protect tones. That's what I was missing. I didn't have protect tones on, so it was giving me this real kind of harsh dodge. So you can get a bit of texture put in without necessarily having to paint a lot of texture, and you don't need to put it everywhere. It just gives a bit there. Anyway, that's a technique that you can play around with. Other points to cover were what? We talked about the lighting, talked about that. One of the things that we're not having on yours, which I would suggest thinking about, is getting just a bit more glossiness to the skin. His skin feels really dried out right now. There's no specular lights going on. And if we want to take a look at this is the concept art for Azog. I think it was his name. Azog, the white orc from the Hobbit movies. Beautiful concept art. If you go out and you Google for it, you can see the image where it's the progression of the piece and see how he went about creating it. But you'll notice on here that he has all of these lovely little specular lights that make the skin feel like it's a little moist or it's a bit waxy. You got the little lights on the nose. You have quite a few lights around the scar tissue, which is normal. I mean, I've got a scar on my finger here, and it is a glossier texture than my normal skin. We also have a tendency to get more little highlights up around the eye because it is generally more moist from the eyeball itself. Somewhere else is probably going to be on the enamel, on his tusk, and around his teeth, again, because the mouth is often more moisture. So you could come in here and pick out a little brush. I would put it on its own layer to begin with, and then probably add too much, and then pull back on it a little bit. So put in, it's like here, that's a pretty good change of values. So we might get a little highlight on there. Probably going to get a little highlight there. Maybe a couple of them around there. Maybe one along that area. We're probably going to get one along here. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's white. This is a very bright scene on his, so most of his highlights are pretty close to white. But the highlight cannot be brighter than the light source. So it might be like this. And it doesn't have to be a perfect, little circle or oval. That's something you would commonly see in a more cartoon thing. but it's going to show a little bit of the texture of the skin. Again, if you want to talk about doing skin texture, you might have that kind of pull off that way a little bit. And we could have some little highlights catching on the tooth, the tusk. And we could even be picking up some, not as much, but some little spots showing up a bit more in there. And the moisture could be picking up some little spots. Might even get them on lips. Lips have a tendency to be more moist, so you could be getting some highlights from that. And it's a small thing, but try coming in there and adding in a bit of those and see if that doesn't help pick it up a little bit. Anything else? Oh, the neck form, you mentioned the neck, anatomy, and I think the nice big traps work for him. But yeah, I would try to treat it like the neck is a cylinder that's kind of widening out till it runs into the traps. So we might adjust this so that we kind of have the neck coming down and we get to see that angle change a little bit. It doesn't just go straight up to the cranium. We kind of have a neck angle change there. Then we can have, actually here, we have that cylindrical form as that goes back, and we can have some wrinkles as basically this cylinder shape form is back there. Then the traps are having to wrap up around it. So we can have some wrinkles kind of coming up there. And it's not a big change there, but I think it gets you closer to a more believable anatomy. Okay, that's it for this one. Orly is up next. He's saying, I spent a lot of time on this. It is evident. This has come a long way since the concept. Let's take a look. This was the concept. So you've gone in there. You've done a lot of work with the skin. You've done a lot of work with the hair. You adjusted the anatomy of the shoulder. This feels so much better, much more believable that you could turn your head at that angle. So let's read on. You say, quite happy with the result. Learned a lot about skin through this challenge. I think you certainly did. This is getting a good skin read from it. How about you're welcome for the critique. Thanks for joining the challenge. I think I still have a lot to improve. We all do. You will always have more to improve. I didn't go with the big nose idea because I'm practicing Asian features. Good with me. As I say, I toss out a lot of ideas. They're not necessarily always things that you need to follow. I just want you to be aware of them. So, on this one, some of my thoughts on this is the general skin is reading quite well. I like the skin tone variations, warmer across the cheek area, warmer along the shoulder. You've got some patterns, like freckle sort of patterns and spots along, which is really nice. The hair is working pretty good. You've cleaned it up nicely. I think there's more work to be done on it, but it's coming along. So, where do we go from here? One of the first things that I would suggest for the overall image is to adjust the background. Everything, it's like the skin isn't able to stand out very well, and that green isn't allowed to really be itself because the yellow background just sort of runs everything together. The greens that you have on these skins over here have another color to contrast against, and that helps make the green work. So I'm just curious if we can grab this, and I've grabbed most of the yellow here, I think. And let's copy and paste that on its own layer, turn that off for a second. It's like if we switch this to being darker, now we get, I feel like the skin tones are even better, that they're not having to compete against that yellow. And I mean, if you just go black, she stands out pretty good. If you want to keep it up on the lighter tone, I would just say let's tone down the saturation. You can see the difference there. She actually stands out more. The color choices do as well. You could switch over to a different tone. Maybe the background reflects more of her hair color than it does her skin color. Now, something in that region even. But that's something to think about. I think that would be a quick change that would help the image overall. Or you could just push it to white. That would work as well. Actually, let's see that. Yeah, I mean, even that, see, it seems cleaner. The colors have better pop to it. Next up is the ear I'm finding just to be too high. The proportions are being pushed to the point where it feels like you're just stretching the head out, and yeah, it just feels, it doesn't feel anatomically correct to have that ear quite that high. I would suggest getting it and just dropping it down a bit. About there feels better, and it's more like her face is just long through here rather than the whole thing has been stretched, because normally the ear is going to be about equal at the nose. Off to the side is the eyebrow down to the bottom of the nose, and this one's running up by her eyeball. Just there feels better. Next, let's look at the mouth. Yeah, I think I actually had a picture of the mouth. It seems like the major feature that is not jiving as well with the rest of the face. This all feels like it got a lot of attention, and the mouth is sort of like, I'm not sure how to resolve this. So I just took a photo of myself and got about that same perspective, and that is a odd sort of expression to try to make with your mouth. I'm not sure if she's talking. The thing is, like, that one lip is up, but she has her mouth open like she's about to say something. That's an odd combination. Anyway, if you want to do it, do it. But you'll see that you're having a really planar edge on the edge of her lips, and lips just don't really work that way. Also, her lips are getting very dark very quickly, and there's no curve. Remember, this is more cylindrical, right, along the edge. So let's try grabbing some of your tones up here and bringing them down and letting that edge soften out a bit. Remember, the lips are not something on the skin. They're just another part of the skin. It's skin that has a slightly different texture than the rest of the skin. But it's the same organ, and one bleeds into the other one. They run together. This photo also shows me that the anatomy here changes a bit. This is probably going to be going up. More like that. you built it based, I guess you were looking at this one down here, but you're also working with a different perspective. You're looking down on her by a decent amount. You're not giving the impression that we're really looking down on this girl. Also with the teeth, we can do some work with the teeth, with them being a bit more blue, a bit more gray. We can also get some specular lights, same way we have on the eyeballs. We can get some little lights on the teeth. For a character like this, you could probably have more distinct canines. Also watch the shapes there in the lips. That's not a real harsh light. It's not going to just wash out her lips as much. So take your own pictures and kind of work through that. Next up, the nostrils are probably going to be getting, I would pop them just a bit darker back in there. And that other nostril will be curving back down into it. I want to have a little more plane there. Back underneath there. Okay. And the eye sizes are getting off a bit with this back one is getting too small compared to the other one. Oh. So if you look at that one, this one is considerably smaller than the other one. If you compare the two sizes. So simple answer is to just, scale that one up a bit. Then you will need to adjust the eyeball, not the eyeball, the iris, so she doesn't look like she's cross-eyed. And this is probably going to be more like that. We're probably going to get a bit more curve there. Yeah. So watch the eyes on that one. Let's see. And then the edge of the hair probably could be softened out a bit. Even if you stick with that same background, this is really harsh for the hair along the edge. We could get something like a bit more of a bristle style brush and soften that edge up a bit. Come back and forth. One side you're doing the red, one side you're doing yellow. And then you will have softer edges and overall fill through the hair, which will actually put the eye back towards the features more because they will be in greater sharpness. And sometimes if you want, without necessarily having to use the background color, you can pick some other color that has a medium value. Like if you want it to go duller, you can run that along some of the edges. And that would just help the hair feel a bit more natural, get to the same sort of level of believability that you have with the skin. Okay, that'll do it for this one. Arlie, thanks for joining another challenge. I know you've been very consistent with improving and really applying yourself and listening to the feedback. And always look forward to seeing what you come up with. That was the cover. Jackie, nope, I guess it'll be this one. Joven up next. Say, thank you for the feedback. Had a lot of fun fixing and adjusting everything. Played around with the face paint a little bit. Bottom right image is how it looks without the face paint. Okay. Okay, this is one where it's a good point to go find a reference for the face. You're like, well, I don't have a reference to that face. I know you don't know somebody that looks like this, but almost any face with that expression at that angle is going to give you information that you need. So don't just rely on designs and general idea references. Get a reference of a face. That's one of the things that you don't have. Remember, what you need to do is get the idea, your creative idea, and combine it with realism, believability, the way things actually look. And you mesh the two of them, and there you will have a believable, creative subject. Right now we have a lot of creativity. We don't have quite enough realism anchoring it and selling the believability factor. So here is a photo I took of myself. Lovely. That was about as close as I can get to trying to look like this fellow. And several of the things that you might take away from this. Just adjusting the colors to match up a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Is watch the ears. Ahead at that angle, the ears look really low, all right? Because you're dropping them, you're changing the angle of the head. You know, if the head is like this and you're viewing it from the front, and the ears are back here, and then you tilt the head back, the ears are now down here, and you're looking up at all of this over the ears. So the ears are now down here at the same level as the mouth. Well, we're off there a bit. So you have the ears placed where they normally be if the head was straight on, not if it was tilted. So we got to get those guys and move them down, and that's going to get the proper angle to the head. We can also look at the structures around the face, the different kind of folds that form, the way that the light works on some of the features. And it's not copying the proportions. If you want it to look like the person, if I want it to look like me, I would follow my proportions. But that's not what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is look at it and say, okay, well, how are the lips working here? How are the teeth working here? Because I don't feel like they're quite right. You know, one of the things I'm not really getting right is the lip is like coming up with a stark angle in the middle. Well, you can't really do that with your lip. So that's something we learned that we need to change. Something else that you can see is, look how nice and round this is. Again, another one, very round. Also, it looks like the lower lip is sort of overlapping the top lip. And that this is one major shape, and then that one sort of sets inside of it with an M shape. Something else to keep in mind is that the teeth here have just been placed arbitrarily. But, and this applies to some other ones coming up, so the rest of you guys pay attention too. You got to keep in mind the structure of the actual skeleton in here. The mouth, the teeth in the mouth are going to be something like this. We all have a skeleton inside of us. And all of us, you can see where the skeleton with that bridge is there, and that's coming down here. This is like this, and that. Then the lower teeth are here. These teeth are coming up, meeting there, but they're really extending up to about there. Kind of along like that. And then the bridge of the nose is there. Going back in about like that. Eyeball itself, you can see the shape of the eyeball in there. So this is all the volumes of what's going on. And we can see underneath that a bit. And we have the lower teeth. And they're going to be about the same coming down. And that's what we're losing a bit on yours, is the understanding of the understructure to the face. So here it's like, okay, he has a modified skeleton, skull. Fine, that's fine. But it comes down here, and that means that the teeth need to match to this skeleton. Yeah, that's my new Halloween costume. You know, I'm gonna just draw a skeleton, skull on my face. This is probably going to curve upwards, right? This is going to be the anatomy here. These are going to curve this way, most likely. And then these teeth, yeah, these teeth, you got to watch where these teeth would be lying. That's completely centered. I didn't do that right at all. You can kind of divide up where the teeth would go. And then make sure that the right tooth is there. Like this would be a canine here, right? Right along this area. And then another thing that we can notice is we're not getting the underside of this. We're not getting this plane. We're running from the chin straight to the Adam's apple with no plane. We got to have the part that comes back from the chin to where it meets the neck. So we're likely going to have a little up curve here as that sort of flattens out. Then we're going to have this plane, and then we'll have the Adam's apple bit down there. And then we can also see the different fold patterns that this sort of expression makes on the face. That this is pulling down on either end, and it's getting fatter here and thinner there because that muscle's pulling up, pushing up. I'm not sure exactly which, but we're getting a distinct form here. You get some little dents in on your chin as you're trying to make that expression. You've got, some fold here. So this is a good way to use references. It doesn't have to be an exact reference. You just need a bit of authenticity that you can take from your photo and apply it. Up here, like these are generic folds. Looking at a photo will give you better fold patterns along the brow like that. And people have different fold patterns. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like a fingerprint. Everybody has a different anatomy and shape to their skull and skin, and so they start folding in different ways. So maybe he has, a couple more folds or less folds, or it goes in a slightly different pattern. Sometimes you can have a fold that comes down and breaks up that middle one. Folds up here. I also have to remember this is probably going to be trying to bend down a little bit like that. You can look at the way that the skin, even with this expression, the skin is kind of hanging down a bit there. Yeah. So that would be a good way to take it a step further, bring in a bit more believability to it. One of the other things was just the shape of the nostrils, the end of the nose. I forgot to mention that. Where you have yours completely flat, as if you're seeing it straight on. But the fact is that this whole area, the mouth barrel, is very rounded. And you can see that, particularly on me at this angle, that the center nostril piece ends far up visually than the bottom there. So that is a bit of information that you can apply where, okay, this is coming up here. Essentially, we have a big ball of the nose there, thinking about the volumes. And then we're going to have the nostril coming out like this, and then it's going to connect down here. So I'm going to get less of a shape like this and more of a up-down, something more like that, right, for the pattern here. And then that could come off, and it's a bit more believable that that line would be there if you're showing the form change. All right, that'll be it for this one, I think, Joven. Let's take a look. Anything else? Nostril underplaying there. Yeah, if you're going to do the face paint, you probably need to push it a bit further. It's rather light. It doesn't show up too well. Make it either brighter or thicker. Something on that line is probably going to serve you a bit better. Okay, now we have Jackie. Jackie, big improvement over last review. This was your initial one, so you've come a long way. The anatomy is far more accurate on what you have. I think you're paying a lot more attention to the three-dimensional forms going on. You've developed the whole piece in a more believable fashion. You had like the spikes on the muscles there, and the lack of hair and stuff. It was just a little odd. So you've come in, you've addressed a lot of those issues, which is great to see. And take a here. So this is same thing as we looked at last time. There's a lot of creativity and a lot of ideas being thrown into this, but it is getting too far removed from a good basis of reality. And that's what we need to reestablish. So same thing. Take a photo. Take a photo of yourself. Take a photo of somebody else. And try to mimic the same angle. And if you can, the same lighting. It's not the same lighting for the one that I have here. But what are some things that we can learn from it? How could we apply some of the information? The eyes feel like they're getting away from you a bit. And if you were to focus anywhere, and if you want to put some time into doing some studies of eyes and the eyebrow section along here, well worth your time. So going forwards, that would be a pretty good one. It feels like you're getting a bit lost in here as to how the forms work and what's going on. The wrinkle patterns are a little arbitrary. It's like you're kind of putting wrinkles in places, but like you're not sure if that's really where they go or not. And that's because you're not having a good enough reference to go off of. So keep what you have and then start bringing in a bit more accuracy from the photo. So for here, let's actually do it this way. Change it up a little bit and drop that down so that we can see some lines show up a bit better. The lines here, let's tone those down. So for here, we can look at the shapes going on with the brow section. This feels like the brow is really overarching the eye quite a bit, more like what we see on the photo here. So we want to look at this contour. What is that doing? Well, the eye is in here, and we've got the eye kind of covered up by skin, most of it. And this one comes back down here. And you've got that form there. And then we have the form of the brow sort of coming up and over here. Lightly put in where the eyebrow is so I can account for that volume. And then we have this sort of triangular pattern of the folds as it follows the contour of the nose, and then coming up here. But you notice that this is coming down not further back, but from the inside there. And then coming back down. And then you have the exaggerated nose, which is fine. But let's do that. Now the nostril will need to fold back on itself. So this is going to be a bit of a curve, kind of like that. And we're going to have an angle change here. Even on me, you can see that shape where that angle changes. On this one, if you want the ball of the nose, you can do maybe a bit like that. And then looking at the same shapes here. So this is coming down. Like this. So that's staying about the same place. I think the eyes could actually be made a bit larger. They're feeling too small for the face. The eyes could be a bit bigger back in there. And then you have that major volume. So you have that immediate one on the ball of the eye. And then you have a bit of a bag there, if you're not super young, where it is running into what? The shape of the skull, the volume of the skull underneath it. So we can determine where the eye socket is. And that's going to be running over to the eye socket. And same sort of thing with the mouth on this one is that we need to know where are those teeth starting. And those teeth are coming out. Teeth don't really work like that. Teeth need to stay in line though. So that skull's coming out here. Teeth are going to be kind of on this curve. Remember, this is a barrel. And then what's going to happen? These teeth have got to follow that same barrel that's been shifted. So watch the curvature of those as they come back like that. And then they need to follow that curvature, and they also need to follow that they're pointing down the right angle. And you're going to have those teeth go back in there. And we're going to have these teeth back here. Turn that off for a second. Yeah, it's going to drop down. Got a bit of jaw that you might be able to see stick out along there. Nope, something like that. Thinking through the anatomy. And that'll help keep that stuff in line. What else? With the ear feels like it's just sort of molding into the side of the head. So any quick ear reference like this just help establish some of the major forms on the ear. One is it's not connected on the top, obviously. So we want to make sure that that is distinct coming back here. We've got a different form. And you've kind of got this going on. Remember, this top piece is a cylinder as it sort of folds over. Then we are missing any of the interior shapes. Old people have a tendency to have very baggy earlobes. So you might do that and make it a bit wrinkly. And the top might get a bit wrinkly as well too. Just to help sell that age. And then this, of course, can be having some wrinkles there as well. So This is where we're getting your idea, which is a good direction with the idea, and then infusing it back with some good, accurate anatomy to help sell that idea. Anything else? I talked about that reference for this. Nope, I think we're good. That's what we're going to go over there. Robert, before I forget, Robert, I am using a little close-up of your machine here as the thumbnail for this video. So heads up, I can change it if you want. Let me know. If you don't want me to change it, you don't need to tell me anything. So the first machine that we've actually looked at tonight, we had a lot more giant entries than we did machines, but the concept. You addressed a lot of the areas. Actually, you addressed everything that we talked about last time, which was originally it felt too much like it was a living thing inside of a suit and not so much a machine. And that had a lot to do with the helmet style face. So I'd suggested either changing it or removing it. And then talked about redoing the glass so that we could see in it better, and creating more of a terrarium sort of feel to it, replacing the joints with gears rather than just glowing orbs, and maybe taking out a bit of the armor like back in here to see some more pistons and that sort of thing going on. So you've added those along the arms. We can see a bit more pistons back on the legs. Cool stuff, good advancements there. So now what are we talking about? You said sorry about over refining the concept. It's not a big deal to me if you put in more time. I want you to be aware of it if you move forward with a lot of professional work, that's something that'll catch up to you, and that if you're trying to efficiently use your time, then that's not an efficient use of it. But for your own stuff, for these sorts of challenges, I mean, if you want to, you feel free. It doesn't make a difference to me, but keep it in mind. The glass is done really well. And it reads very well. It feels like glass. I get the idea of what's going on. And largely, if you notice, guys, it's working because most of it is see-through. Most of the reflections and the distortions take place along the edges, not in the middle. And of course, all of the reflections are bending to follow the contour of the form. And, not at some odd angle. And let's see, and you're lighting the scene as if this is a light source. I think that's working well. So, okay. I don't have that much to say about this one. The perspective looks pretty good. The design is well rendered. The design makes sense. It's well rendered. So we're talking about some smaller stuff here. It's a bit more just design on the rest of the creature. And one of the things I feel is that it is slightly monotone design-wise with the gold and the silver. The green pop is nice, so I'm not saying let's bring in more color. But if you look up at this guy, you see most of it's silver. Then he has like this red that offsets it. Then there are some things that are more gold than silver. And that would be the direction I would suggest thinking. That most of the armor is the silver color. But maybe there are a couple of pieces, like maybe the shoulder pieces are all gold and they have silver details on them rather than, the other way around. And so maybe it has, silver details on these guys and they're overall gold. Maybe these pieces on the back of the hands, maybe they're gold. So some pieces are gold based and other pieces are silver based. And silver should be predominant, but that would just keep it from being too much the same on every single piece. Another thing would be, I think there is a better solution for the hands. These don't feel quite right. Um, uh, these don't feel like they have the same sort of love or believability. I mean, that's not a believable joint like this and like this. And if you were to just say, hey, I need you to, pull out a good mechanical hand off the top of your head and design one, it would take me a little time to do it. But it's been done before. So learn how other people have done it. Go look at, the Terminator endoskeleton and see how they did his hands. Essentially, you need to do that same sort of thing, and maybe you just put a couple of little armor plates over the knuckles or something. But yeah, pay attention to see how they do it. What you're probably going to find is that there is, the main piece coming down, and there's going to be some sort of gear there, axle running through those. Then there is going to be a fixed point on this side, and it's probably going to have a little cable running down so that if there is if I'll do it from the side, it'll make more sense. You have the little rod going through, attaching this piece to this piece. Then this runs back into the knuckle, and you have the hand proper back here, and this would be, the end, I guess. Then how do you get this to come back up? Well, you got to have something to pull it back up. We have tendons. So it's affixed here. Then there is it's kind of like a fishing rod, whatever. So there is a cable that runs up and over here and then back there. And then there's something inside of here that pulls that cable back, and then that makes this go deet, 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 and straighten out because you've shortened that distance. And essentially, that's how those sorts of things work. Actually, right here, this tendon right here on this finger, I snapped before, and I could not straighten my finger. There was nothing to pull my finger back up. So that's exactly what we're talking about, a mechanical tendon, essentially. Okay, that would be one place to put a little attention. Again, learn from actual ones. Look at practical mechanical hands to see how they are designed. A small visual change I think could be nice is a little glowing bit here or there on the machine. So we have lights here. We have green established. I particularly like this little guy. He's cool. We just had the light here on this one. And the inclusion of him floating there in that glass, really nice. But we could have light elsewhere. Say that we set this to linear dodge. Yeah, something like that. Okay. And I'm thinking somewhere in here, maybe there's a light that shines through some of these pieces. Back in there, maybe you can see it in here. Probably need to give it a bit more color for it to have a good show. Somewhere else would be to break up this big shadow pattern. There can be a light that essentially is shining on the inside, and it spills out a bit from inside the cage, the rib cage. And it's going to catch some little lights back in there. This is a great way that you can actually lower the detail in a lot of the shadow areas and still pull off some lights. Like maybe there's a light back in there on the underside, and it's catching just a bit of some of the mechanical pieces. And that's a very common thing that you'll see in like machines and creature designs for games particularly, just to give it extra pop of color, give a little depth to the interiors of things. This piece, this is getting a bit nitpicky on the design, but having this plate on top of that plate, on top of that plate, on top of these plates, it just feels like it's a bit much for a domino effect, that all of these things are just sitting on top of each other like that. I'm almost feeling like, you have a big plate here, then maybe this is just two plates. Like you have a plate there and, and like a plate here. Instead of just layered, layered, layered. Or maybe you don't need that one. Maybe this is just one unit right there. Or you could have one that is more segmented. So it's armor that sort of has this sort of thing going on. And it allows it to actually bend. Like the wrist is bending. Then from a side view, normally straight, it would just look, the plates would look something like that, and they're all little cylinders. But it would have the opportunity to bend if it needed to, because it could get to where it's touching on the bottom, but then you have space in between them on the top. All right, and that would allow for armor, but also bend. Then you could see the interiors on the open spaces there. Okay, wrapping it up on that one. Madao is up next. Just following the same pattern here, we can look at the concept on the left. We primarily talked about the cheeks being really shallow and thin for what should have been a really thick sort of person, and bringing that out more, and you did that feels a lot better. We talked about rounding the brow out some more and adjusting that light so it doesn't feel so angular, and you did that feels better. The blue is kind of nice. With the bluish skin tone gives it a bit more of a pop, which is good. You got rid of the spikes up there. I think that's a good call. Did some work around the mouth. Okay, so on this, moving forwards, how can we learn from this? Same sort of thing. I would say 50% of a design needs to be based in reality. And then maybe 50% of it could be your idea, your creative idea. Just double checking. Nobody said anything for a while. I just wanted to check this stream was still going okay. Okay. So I did the same sort of thing again. I took a photo. Now, I don't have nearly the same face structure as this guy, but I was trying to get the same expression so that we could get better forms on the face. We get better folds on the face. Again, this is a good block-in of what you have in mind. It's the idea of, okay, it's this sort of expression. I can immediately get the idea, the expression you're going for, but it's not really what it would look like. And with a little work, not even a lot of work, we could punch it up to being far more believable. So in this case, instead of just having radiating lines coming up, which is the general sort of simplified version of what's going on, we actually see a different pattern. We have this, we have this one coming forwards like this, that one kind of coming up like that. We have these, like it's this sort of thing, like that coming back down there, where it pulls back on itself like that, and it dips here. Those are some of the things that it's hard to think about. that this is actually pulling in here and there and making two little humps at this part, right? And then we're getting this nice line right here, that fold, where it's pulling, those muscles are pulling in to this point. And we can look at this. The eyes are getting too small. Right, at this point we can say, yeah, the eyes are getting a bit small. The eyes could be bigger. And that really would be okay. We can still put them way back there in the socket, but we can't be letting them just get so small. It doesn't feel quite right. Here we can be checking on these forms. Remember, we got to have some sort of skin that comes up over the form of that volume of that eyeball. And then we have this coming down on top of it. And then look at this. We have this coming here, and that one essentially is on top of it. So this form is coming down, and then the eyebrows following it here. More like this. And he's cutting his eyes way back, which means the white of the eye, which in your case is black, is going to be far more to the inside. And then we're going to have more skin pushing up on that eye there. And it's just about flattened off with that expression. And we can look to see where the light is hitting. It's going to be catching some of this and on this round bit. And this, look at this pattern. This isn't the sort of thing that you generally think of, but skin and that expression looking that direction with the eye is going to be creating this, making that curve because it's running into this, creating this bump because it's also radiating out this way. This is radiating out this way. So that is essentially what to take away from it. Now you want to apply that information to yours, right? So these are now coming out here, and this is coming out here like this. And then you're having this coming down here like this. All right? And adding it in, he's going to be far more believable this way. Oh, the other thing that caught me off a bit here was the angle of the nose. It's got off, and it's understandable why. You have the angle of the head running like this. And the nose should be perpendicular to it, like a T, right? But it's not. And the thing that is easy to forget is that the nose isn't just following the opposite angle, it's still coming out. So in this case, what we have is as if the nose was curving like this, and it's bending this way. So that what should be coming out is being smashed back. Thank you for streaming, Clint. Well, James, I appreciate you watching. And I'm happy too. I'm glad you guys show up. I mean, it's Friday evening. You can do anything you want. And you come out here to watch me goof around on with looking at these things. So love it. Thanks. Appreciate it. Oh, here we need to get this to come out. This is still coming out. So all of this angle is still coming out. And the nose is still coming out. When you think about the planes going on here, this is a plane. This is a plane. This is a plane. No, it's telling me that this bone piece probably needs to move back some, because that nostril would be further over there. It's also in shadow, which means it's going to be more like this. Unless you want just the end of it catching some light there. And you don't have bounce light really very much. I don't know that you need that bounce light. These, unless you bleach them, are probably not going to be that bright. So trying to get that nose twisted back a little bit. What else? This is another one. If we're looking at the anatomy of the skull here, again, coming back to the skull. Speaking of that, would you mind announcing the time of the stream a bit more in advance? I woke up at 6 a.m. to realize the stream was actually at 7 a.m. this time. Well, I announced it out on the Facebook group 5 hours ago. So, or more than that. Yeah, I announced it at about 11 a.m. So it would have been 6 hours before, 6 to 7 hours before the stream. Oh yeah, looking at the skull, coming back to that. Let's grab. If the skull is here, and you've got this sort of thing going on. I'm feeling like the teeth section here is not really aligned with the shape. Like this jaw has to be like this big. This jawline has to be pretty impressive, and the teeth are only covering this section. I'm thinking the teeth would probably come back further for the size of this head, and that you would get more of this curve out of it rather than this one. And now I really see what it is. All right, I was looking at it, it's like something's wrong. You have the teeth, the front teeth, basically going flat, and as much as we're looking down on this, I don't think that's the angle you're getting. I really, man, you might need to give. Yeah, even on this one, you can see that angle that's going back. I think it's going to be flatter than this. Then this is basically going to be going straight up. If you look at that pattern, and yours is more like this. So we need to open up the jaw more. That's what it is. The jaw is too narrow. Sometimes I have to look at it for a minute before I can define exactly what it is. But that's what it is. The mouth and the teeth are too narrow. If you were to look at it from the top, your teeth are following sort of this pattern, where really teeth are going to be following more of that. So, okay, that'll be it on that one. Hopefully you find that helpful. Sometimes I think I'm just rambling and everybody's like, what's this guy even talking about? That's not useful. I can't do anything with that. But this is Thomas. Thomas, huge improvement. Man, this was your concept. And you've done a lot of work. We talked a lot about having good volume and accurate perspective for your creature. And I can tell right here that you went through the steps of figuring that out so you knew volumetrically where everything was fitting in this scene. And we talked about replacing the parts with more believable gears and mechanical, apparatus. And you've done that, so much better here. Major points to go from here. He said, I feel like I learned a bit more about perspective. I think you did too. You're the better for it. Always something to know well. He said, although I had problems with the fourth leg, I think I need more practice with colors. Yeah, we're not going to really worry about colors right now. We're going to treat this more like a design challenge for you. What you're running into there with that fourth leg is the overlapping. And that has to do with the angle at which you chose to see your design. And it works like this. If you have a cube and you've got it laid out like this, then that front leg and that back leg are going to be really close. That front corner and that back corner are going to be really close to the same vertical line visually, so that this side is always going to overlap that side. And in order to get around that, what you have to do is not have an even amount of view for the front and the side. So this is just a split. What you would need to do is have where one side is more angled than the other one, so that the corners are all visible and they don't overlap each other. So now this corner is here and this corner is here. I did make it, it's not as square as the other one. Even if you square it up more, then these still don't overlap each other. And you could see the back leg on this one and the front leg on this one, and they're not going to overlap. That's the only thing. It's something that it's easy to do because you pick it from the perfect corner, and that always means you're going to lose that back bit. But if you see anything, it's probably going to just be like one little piece of one back there. And that's going to be about all you get back there. Okay, what else? Let's talk a little, if you're going to be doing a scene like this, just to keep it from feeling like it's completely floating around, I would suggest just putting in a basic little cast shadow. It doesn't have to be super accurate, but just any little shadow like that will help it to not seem like it's just out in the void. Okay. Here we go. Another little discussion on mechanics. A nice little mechanic bit that you can keep in mind and use on your creatures if you're blocking stuff in or your machines is the 2 and 1. So let's say I have a rod here. This will be my kind of like my axle. And I'll be like this. I want to soften it, not completely erase it. I'll draw some other stuff on top of it. Get a little bigger there. Now coming down to this is going to be the upper bit. And it's going to have to go around this. So he's going to connect here, here, and here, and there. I guess the rod could go out beyond that a little bit. So, and then that's going to go around, right? All the way around. can go up on the other side. That's going to look about the same there. Go up on the other side. And we're going to have thickness for this guy. We're going to add thickness to this one. And that rod comes out, and we can see the other end there. And we can see just maybe a little bit on that side. Then, what's it doing? It's having it run into another piece. So we're looking at a connection like this. And this allows us to have another piece that's affixed in the middle. That's the same sort of thing. And he's running down like this. And there's the thickness of him. And he is connecting right there. And that curves around like this. X-ray vision, we can see him going around the back side there. And then he comes down here. So that is a good way to do joints, because one piece running into another single piece, how do they fit together? They both want to go to the same spot. They both want to attach to that same gear, but how do they not run into each other when it tries to move? Well, one of the ways that you can get around that is by having two coming out and then one coming out. So this could be split, and there's two like this, and they run down, and then this one runs up. And then the rod comes through. And the rod, maybe it has like a cap or something on the end of it. So something like that. Yep. That could probably serve you well here. That's just one little improvement over what you've got. And what you've got is a big improvement over where you were. The other thing that I want to talk about just design-wise is you've got a choice to make here, shapes. Okay? And you can kind of go one of two directions, as notated by my little thing here. And that can be seen with, this is primarily geometric in nature. And if you look at the side of it, it is flat on the top, and then it has a 45 angle, and then it has flat on the side there. And it uses that quite a lot. So it goes flat, it has a 45, flat on the top. And this edge cutting technique is very common for a lot of different industrial designs. And like this is flat, although it does use curves along the edge there. This one is different in that it uses almost no straight pieces. It uses no angular, it doesn't come out here flat, 45, and come down. Everything is a curve here. Curve, 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 curve. Everything's curved. It's organic curves with inorganic matter. It's a metal inorganic thing using like natural curve patterns. And yours is sort of a mix between the two. And I would suggest going one or the other. This one does the same thing, but I think this one's pulling it off better. Like he has this nice curve to the overall body form, but then everything else is more geometric. Yeah, there are curves, but they're not sinewy curves. They're not this sort of S curves and repeated S wave curves. It's just a basic curve that mimics the shape of a gear, the curve of a gear, right? No fanciness there. But here we have like really organic, almost malleable sort of curves. And I would like to see, if you want to continue trying to be a bit more geometric with some of your shapes, try to think about it a bit more like pieces of metal that were having to be bent, not quite so organic, and molding in the shapes to mimic that a bit more. Okay. Let's see what else. No, I think that I'll do it. If you do want to continue, metal is usually best if you paint it darker than you think and then add some lights back into it, and usually not as many lights as you think it needs. Right now, the whole thing is pretty high in value and it's fairly matte. So you're going to get more specular lights like you have here, where most of it is dark, and then when it does get lighter, it doesn't just gradually get lighter. It sort of jumps lighter. Okay, we have Tia. Said, "Hi Clint, I tried focusing on functionality this time and not working with colors as you suggested. And we're here. This was the original concept. This, another one, huge improvement from the concept. I think you had a lot of passion, a lot of creativity going for the original one, but not the same execution. Also, you were going with that, coming at the camera, really forced perspective thing, and wasn't doing you a lot of good. So this one feels much more believable, much more in line with what the brief was asking for. So how can we improve it from here? The functionality is more believable. The shapes and the perspective and the volumes are better as well. No, I was trying to turn this one off. So here, it's about finding better forms and better shapes for the overall stuff that you already have. One of the first things is, I'm not sure why there's a ball and chain hanging off the bottom. I can't see where it would be functional or usable. Having like a ball and chain hanging here, now that makes sense. It reminds me of Mr. Wink from Hellboy 2 that has the fist, the metal, mechanical fist that he can shoot, and it has a chain on it and he can retract it back. So you could do the same sort of thing with the ball and chain, where he's got that on there and he's got like the chain comes back and it goes through these series of gears, so that you get the idea that there's extra wound up inside of the arm and that it could be released or pulled back like a winch. That would make more sense than the single one coming off the bottom. Okay, what next? Talking about the shapes, this is something to pay attention to a little bit. It's getting a bit boring in some of the shapes, and you're keeping a lot of the same silhouettes kind of all the way down, where this is sort of staying the same thickness, the hand stays about the same thickness, and there's no real change to the silhouette there. This one does it really nicely, where you've got nice, I need to get something else here. Nice big shape there, boom. Then you have this smaller shape. Then what? It gets down to the forearm, boom, nice big wide shape. And then boom, this nice big shape. This one's a bit longer this way. This one's a bit longer this way. And then that helps to have a more interesting read. You've got large against smaller. You've got taller and wider against shorter and stubbier. And that's what we need to apply. And it's up to you. Does he have big biceps, little forearms? Does he have massive forearms, little hands? Does he, whatever it is, you can change it up. Same sort of thing here. He's got like this curve with that side straight. On this side, it's more like this is curved and that side is straight. This one isn't nearly as good in that department. This one's too monotone. Yeah, that's not nearly as interesting. Other thing would be like the shoulders. These are basically spherical. Okay, yeah, that makes sense for what they're doing, right? They're spherical in nature, that's their movement. But can we not find a more interesting, form? Can we not have some, metal plate come up here, like over top of, this body piece, and then maybe it has like kind of the classic armor where it comes down maybe over right there and it slightly overlaps the chest area. And then you could have like the under gears there and then the back side of the metal there. And then this is something that we can find something more interesting here. And taking inspiration from the reference images, what if we put like a kind of a round hole here and there's some sort of light back inside of that, kind of what that other one has. And then we could have metal plates coming back over the top of that. Same sort of thing you have here. And then maybe instead of one big piece up on top, you've got pieces coming up mimicking that same curve on each side. Then you kind of have almost spinal vertebrae shapes coming off the back. Right? And here we can almost have rib shapes. Taking inspiration from anatomy is good. So you can have like a series of, actually if you're going to do that, have it come down here and have like a connection. And then another connection. And then another connection. And you have those sort of curved ribs. And then it has a piece coming down here. So we're keeping all the basic layout of where everything is. We're keeping the basic volumes of everything, but we're finding more interesting ways to depict them. And we're using a variety of different sort of methods. Here we're using smaller, repeated shapes for the ribs. This is a larger shape that is contrasting against it. These are angled shapes. This is a completely round shape. From here, we have angled things coming up. So what we have single repeating patterns coming back there. So essentially, it's kind of the reverse. So here, instead of having multiple small ones angling in, we have one major one angling in. And where over here we had the large one on the outside, we have the tight ones on the inside. So we're changing it up, but yet it creates a pattern to it. Okay, what else? That was most of it. If you're going to do a cast shadow, let's just try to keep it a bit more accurate. Right now, the whole thing is lit. The light tells me that the highlights tell me the light is right up here towards the front, kind of a general top down, but yet this is being lit as if it's almost being lit from the side. Most of the shadow is going to be, right in this area. So let's just make sure we try to get that a bit more accurate if we do that. Okay, that wraps it up for Tia. Last one we're going to take a look at is Tyler. Tyler is another one where grabbing a photo snapshot could really help bring in a bit more information and bring up that believability a bit more. You had it on yours, but yours was only ambiently lit. It didn't have strong enough light on it to start picking up the forms of what was going on. With the lighting on mine, it did have strong enough overhead light to start picking out some of the folds and the wrinkles and stuff. Okay. So for yours, one of the things that, oh yeah, you said I still need to work on the cloak and the crown. I won't mention much about that. Okay, you'll work on the cloak, that's cool. The only thing on the crown is if you continue working on it, and they read fine, I understand exactly what you're going for there, that you're probably going to have a bit of specular light on some of these metal pieces. And that's really going to help sell the metal. Some of the reflections, right, from the face and the surrounding area. The light down there is going to bounce back up. And it would be nice just to have that little the little material difference. Most of this is going to just be like skin and hair, and up here you're going to have some pops of metallic textures up there. Okay, what else? You know, just looking at mine, I could see that if it's a creature that has that much facial hair, then he probably is going to have some stubble. So we can come in here and just do a little scumbling around to create some stubble patterns. That doesn't mean you come in here and you paint lots of dots. You know, he doesn't have dots. So we can just try to create a little darker stubble pattern in there. I'll be going to bed now. It's 2:05 in the morning. Oh, Michael, get some sleep. We're going to wrap up soon, but just catch it tomorrow. Thanks for sticking around, though. Appreciate it. So a little of that could help out. Same thing here. He probably has some follicles that aren't fully grown, and so you're going to have a not perfect edge along the side there. Okay, another one that like we talked about, we want to come back and make sure we're establishing the proper forms. This is a very angular edge, so that needs to be more cylindrical. We can soften that out a bit more. This is anatomically, I think that needs to probably fold back on itself. And instead of just a bigger round shape like you have, what I made it into, keep with what you had, which was the more angled there. It's better. What else? Oh, just with like the lighting is fairly general. I feel like this is lighter on this side. I feel like the lighting is probably that sort of thing, which means that we're thinking in terms of planes. Plane says that eye is probably going to just be black. That whole form is going to be dark. And all of this is probably going to be shadowed. I don't know that you're really going to get anything in there. All of this is probably going to be shadowed. Yep. I think you want to have another bag on top of that one. What else? You're saying you're struggling with the facial hair. Oh, the facial hair, you can put it in and just create some sort of noise like you have there. Then, I can grab a personal brush. What you want to do is start creating tufts. You start layering the tufts together. And each one should have some curve to it. And it could take a little bit, all right? And that here usually doesn't just poke straight out. It's probably going to have just a little inward curve right here on this part, and then you're going to have that outward curve there. Again, I'm going to try to form kind of tufts of it. Now let one sort of run, and then another one sort of comes out from around him. Try to get that and sort of put those two together. Now I do have color variants on this turned on this brush. You're working more with S curves. And then after you do that, you can come back in with smaller groups, right? And maybe you can pick out some more individual hairs. And they're probably going to be lighter, that which shows up. Let's see. We have that really darkness at the bottom of the eye. I just don't think we're really going to be getting that. If anything, we're going to have a little darkness here underneath from some of the eyelashes, which you don't have to paint individual eyelashes, but at a distance there will be a dark tone from the eyelashes, and then it will be getting a bit brighter on that thickness there. The ear looks like another one that just wasn't really referenced. The forms aren't quite right here, and we need to adjust that. It feels like it's really tilted out, which you can have it tilted out some, but maybe not quite that much. We can just do a bit more like that. And you want to watch for that Y shape right there. I saw a demo one time. How did they describe doing it? They said to draw an ear, it's like drawing a question mark with a Y inside of it. And that can give you the basic curves of what the ear is doing. So that's coming down here. That's looping up. That's going to drop down. Going to have another bit here that runs to the inside Y shape. And this one leads down to the ball. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're on the right track. And you mentioned that you were thinking about adding a side light. I think that's probably good. If you wanted like a stronger light to come down one of these edges, could look nice. That side or this side, either one. But you're in a good place. Get a photo. Doesn't have to be my photo here. You can take your own photo or find somebody older. Even if it's a woman, it doesn't even matter that much because wrinkles are wrinkles. And also try to get this expression. You can look to see how that affects some of the forms here in the mouth. And this is another one where the lips are a bit hard, I think, on the edge. And we can come back through here and soften those out a bit more. Okay. All right, well, that will wrap it up for that one. I think we're finished with that. Let's take a look. Covered everybody? Yeah. Okay, well, that is it for the Machine and Giant Challenge. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we will be kicking off the Hogwarts and Stage challenge probably tomorrow. I will put a post out on the Swatches Facebook group when they get posted up, the tickets get posted up. And, you know, we will have 2 weeks in order to come up with the sketch for that one. I'm going to, trying to think of any other announcements. Oh, if you haven't already and you're a patron, I added 4 new videos to the patron video library. And you can go, you know, watch those. There's 3 hours of education out there, multiple paint overs, a lot of this same sort of stuff. And yeah, make sure you go check that out. If you're not a patron and you want to be able to get to the video library, then you need to join at the $20 tier or higher and be processed in the next reward cycle, and you can have access to those. Okay, I wish you guys the best. Until next time, keep drawing.